The tasks chosen for maths lessons are hugely important for the development of mindset. If they're short and closed with one right answer, like most math questions that are in maths classrooms, and students are constantly either just getting them right or wrong, then it's really hard to develop the idea that maths is about growth and learning. And if you're constantly getting them wrong, it's really hard to believe that you can really do maths. So instead, many students, just from the tasks they get, come to believe that maths is more about performance and performing than it is about learning and growth. So my colleague Rachel Lambert told me recently that her son, who is 6, came home from school one day and said he hadn't enjoyed his math class. And when she asked him why, he said, "Math is too much answer time and not enough learning time." And I thought that was really interesting, that even a 6-year-old got the sense that math classes were not about space for learning. Instead, they're often about performing. And the more math classes I visit, the more I can see that maths classrooms offer maths more as a performance subject than a learning subject. So what do I mean by that? So the big point is that tasks need to give students the space to learn and to see that maths means learning, not just performing. So what does that mean? Even a small change can make that difference. For example, a really classic maths problem you'll see in textbooks is find the perimeter of this shape. Now, if we change that question to, can you construct 2 different rectangles with a perimeter of 26? We change completely what students do. In the first one, they're coming up with an answer. In the second one, we're asking them to make choices, and this evokes the thought process for students. They also change from thinking, I'm finding the answer, to I'm thinking, learning and growing, even though this is assessing exactly the same mathematics. Now, I wouldn't say that finding 2 rectangles with a certain area is a great task by any means, but it illustrates the process of moving from performing to growing and thinking. So here is a great task that can be very different depending on how it's presented. And this illustrates my point as well, I think. So first I'm going to present the task in a way that is oriented towards a growth mindset. So in this task I'm going to ask you to do, you'll see case 1, 2 and 3 of a shape growing. And my question for you that I want you to think about and write about is, how do you see this shape growing? How would you describe the growth? So when we used this task, when we were teaching algebra to some 7th and 8th graders, a group of 3 students saw it grow in 2 different ways, as you can see from a picture of their work. With one of the boys saw it growing as cubes adding onto the bottom row each time, and the other one saw it as cubes adding on to each column. Now there are other ways of seeing the growth that you might have seen. Some people see it as a growing square, for example. But as students worked on that task, and we also asked them to work out how many cubes were in the 100th case, they really had to think about the shape and the form and the number of cubes. And as they worked on that, they came to develop and understand a quadratic function. So that's really big. They weren't just given a function to manipulate, but they are actually forming it. They were seeing it visually and understanding its components. And as the students worked on the task, the first thing they realized was that they'd seen it in different ways. And they talked about that, and that deepened their understanding of the function. They then worked to try and work out how the shape was growing. When I've worked in workshops and I've given this task to teachers with the same wording, asking them to find the 100th case, thinking they would work in similar ways to the students, instead they made a table, put in the numbers, could see that the function was growing as an n plus 1 squared function, put in the number for the 100th case, and came up with an answer. Then when I asked them what their n represented in their n plus 1 squared, they really didn't know what that n represented. And I realized that that change in the presentation of asking people, how do you see the shape growing and how many cubes are in case 100, completely changed the task. So now when I do workshops with teachers, I might ask for the 100th case, but I always start just by asking that, how do you see this shape growing, as I asked you.